Welcome to Musing on the Bard. I'm your host, Sally McLean. On today's episode, we welcome the wonderful Australian actor, Don Bridges. Currently based in Melbourne, Australia, Don has been an actor for over 50 years, working in the creative industries as an actor, director, voice artist, and teacher. His work in theatre includes stints in London, New York, San Francisco, Melbourne, Adelaide, Darwin, New South Wales, and Western Australia, and he has appeared on stage in over 25 productions for Melbourne Theatre Company. Don also has an extensive screen career with credits including Two Heads Creek, Paper Champions, Tender Hook, Romper Stomper, Evil Angels, Malcolm, Ricky and Pete, Road to Nil, The Hard Word, The Oyster Farmer, Charlotte's Web, Gettin' Square, The 12, Nautilus, The Clearing, Jack Irish, Blue Healers, Man from Snowy River, Neighbours, Stingers, Something in the Air, The Miss Fisher Murder Mysteries, and Upper Middle Bogan. Don is also a musician, playing guitar, mandolin, ukulele, and bodhran, the Irish drum. Don also proudly serves as Vice President of the Victorian Actors Benevolent Trust. Shakespeare Republic audiences will remember Don from his beautiful work as Corran in Shakespeare Republic All the Webs a Stage, The Lockdown Chronicles, a performance that was awarded alongside the rest of our amazing cast with Best Ensemble International Narrative at the 2021 New Zealand Webfest, Best Ensemble Cast Drama at the 2021 British Web Awards, Best Ensemble Performance at the 2022 London Webfest in the UK, and nominated for Best Ensemble Performance Drama at the 2022 International Academy of Web Television Awards in the USA. So sit back, relax, and listen in on this lively conversation about Shakespeare, acting, and more with today's guest, Don Bridges.
I don't remember reading or studying Shakespeare at school. We may have done. I had great English teachers, some of whom were actually actors. They had us read and perform other classics like Pygmalion, The Crimson Coconut, Fire in the Snow, and various C.J. Dennis pieces. I may have touched on the Sentimental Blokes version of Romeo and Juliet on the way. An Aussie bloke's retelling of his experience of the play. It's hilarious. I don't feel I had any real contact with Shakespeare until I was about 20 and did an amateur production of Twelfth Night. It was at the Playhouse Theatre in Hobart, 1971 or 72, and I played Sir Andrew Aguchek. It was the beginning of a love and appreciation of the bard. I'm thinking now, I must have tried reading some Shakespeare earlier, as I have a complete works that I'd bought a couple of years before that. I don't remember engaging with it really, or the Tolstoy or the Dostoevsky that I tried to read around about the same time. But that production of Twelfth Night set me on a path to turning professional and leaving the very boring bank job that I was doing at the time.
That's brilliant. Oh, I love it. Oh, that's excellent. Well, Don Bridges, welcome to Musing on the Bard.
Thank you, Sally.
So lovely to have you here. The Sentimental Blokes version of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's in, we actually did the Sentimental Bloke at Melbourne Theatre Company in about 1984, and John Jarrett played the bloke. And there's a wonderful retelling of him taking Doreen to see Romeo and Juliet, but it's all done in Australian vernacular, and he really gets into the fighting. There's blokes punching each other, and they even had swords, and it's great. But it's all rhyming because it's C.J. Dennis, and it's beautiful. And I would urge anybody to go away and find it and have a read of it because it's hilarious.
Oh, that's brilliant. Speaking about the acting thing, found out a new thing about you. Didn't know you used to work for a bank. There you go. Found out new info.
Yeah, 6 years.
Wow.
Probably 5 years too long.
Right. So, and you mentioned it there in your piece, but what motivated you to become an actor?
I was doing a lot of amateur theatre, So I was spending way more time in the theatre than I was in the bank and loving it, just really enjoying it. And then one day I remember standing in my teller's box and looking around at the back of office stuff. And it was at a time when banks were very populated. There were probably 40 people behind the scenes that I could see from my teller's box, and we had 12 tellers. It was a big bank. It was in Hobart. And I was standing there looking around, and there were all these blokes that were 35, 40 years older than me doing a job that anyone with limited intelligence could do with a month's training. And I thought, nah, this has got whiskers on it. And I made my mind up at that moment to resign. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was doing this production of Twelfth Night at the same time. And there was a guy that directed it, Larry, his name was, and he was an American. And he said, you really should be doing this professionally. And I said, oh, no, it's a hobby, I enjoy it. And anyway, he said, no, you really should do this. And I said, so what do I do? Do I go to NIDA, which was the only drama school in Australia at the time? And he said, nah, just go overseas. I said, well, so where do I go? He said, go to the States. I said, you got to have a green card. He said, no, go to Canada, walk in. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, it got me thinking. And then I had friends that had gone to London, so I thought, I will go to London. So I resigned from the bank and bought a ticket to England with the proceeds of my car sale, which I sold, and got on a boat. And on the first night on the boat, I met my wife, and we're still together since 1973.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
we met before we left Station Pier.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I love it.
So then I was in England for 2 years and worked around, worked in a holiday camp for a little while as a chambermaid. And then I got my first professional show, which was Half a Sixpence in Harrogate in Yorkshire. And then I worked in the West End as an assistant stage manager for about a year in a kids company called Unicorn.
Wow.
So there you go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So how long were you in London for?
2 years roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so doing the stage management, sorry, I'm now going to dive into this.
No, that's
my background, as you know, is very similar, is that I did actually start working professionally here in Australia first, but then when I really need to train, and I don't really want to train in Australia just because I didn't want to, at that point I was like, do I want to go to NIDA? Same kind of thing. Do I want to go to NIDA? Yeah. And no, I don't know that I do. And so I ended up also leaving for the UK to train there and did the same thing, ended up working at a nightclub for a year. It happens. And then ended up working, but funnily enough, I ended up landing very much on the production side of things for the BBC, working in production.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So it's interesting that you ended up in stage management on the West End.
Yeah.
After doing the play in Harrogate, which is a lovely part of the world, actually. I do like Yorkshire. But so with the stage management, that would have been was that done as sort of a way to be on the West End and potentially therefore around the roles?
It was a way to get an equity card.
Really?
Yeah, because to audition, you had to have an equity card, and to get an equity card, you had to have a job. So my first job in Harrogate, I had an agent who was Australian, and there's a whole story about how that came about. But he put me on his books, and he rang me one day and he said, I have a job for you in an audition for you at Drury Lane. And I kind of went, oh, my goodness. It was in the basement of Drury Lane, but that's beside the point. I went in and I danced and I sang and did a scene. And a couple of weeks later, he said, I have a contract for you for half a sixpence in Harrogate as an assistant stage manager. And I thought, oh, fabulous. So I went there, and there was another young Australian guy there, Terry, and we were sitting together and chatting, and the director came up and he said, "No, you two are dancers, aren't you?" And we both looked at him and went, "Yep," because Terry's contract also said ASM understudy. So we thought we were getting our equity cards as assistant stage managers, but we ended up on stage working as dancers. Wow. We were the only two male dancers in the show, and neither of us were dancers. So it was a very interesting 7 weeks. And then after that, I went back to London and joined the Unicorn Children's Theatre, which was in the Arts Theatre, the new Arts Theatre in Great Newport Street. Right. And I was there for a year as an ASM understudy, but I also did music for shows and had small roles. But I think probably the best thing was just watching really fabulous actors working day by day, because it was a repertoire company. So we would rehearse one show at night and perform a different one during the day.
Yeah, that's the old rep system, which was a brilliant system and sadly doesn't really exist over there anymore.
No, I know. It's such a shame. It's the best training ground.
Well, absolutely, it was a great training ground, and there was such a plethora of people obviously also employed by that whole circuit. As you know, so many of our British colleagues who are a little bit, upset about the fact it doesn't exist anymore, because it was also a way just to earn money while looking to audition for other things. But again, as you say, great training ground, great learning ground. That is so interesting to me. I didn't realize that's how it all started for you. That is very cool. So what was it that then brought you back to Australia?
My contract finished. My wife came back a few months earlier, so I came back. And then I was offered a job in Hobart.
Right.
With the Tasmanian Theatre Company, had just started a theatre and education company, and was run by a wonderful woman called Barbara Manning. And it was just starting, but it's the company that eventually became Salamanca Theatre Company.
Right.
So we were based in Salamanca, and we had Nigel Triffett came down to direct us, a woman called Anne Harvey, and we did a lot of plays during that time, and it was a fantastic experience. We toured all over Tassie. We went to the Adelaide Festival. We played all over Australia, so it was great. And one of the plays that I did there was called "I'll Be In On That," and it was a history of Australian trade unions, and we played it in Adelaide. We played it. I then came to Melbourne and did it with Children's Arena Theatre.
Yep.
Did 2 seasons of it there, and that kind of weirdly led me to doing my first show at Melbourne Theatre Company, which was Richard III, because the director of Richard III had seen the show at the Adelaide Festival and got touched and said, "I've got a role for you." So that was it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Shakespeare brought you into what would be considered mainstream theatre in this country with MTC.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was that was 2 years, so I did 12 plays back to back.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was rep. So we were doing rehearsing one play during the day and playing a different one at night. So Tech Week, which is normally an absolute nightmare, was like a week off because we only had one show to concentrate on.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's very cool.
It was good.
Well, I mean, which answered my next question, which was how did you come to perform Shakespeare? So we've got it there twice. We've got Twelfth Night and then Richard III. So
Yeah.
Shakespeare has factored quite a bit into your moving into the acting profession.
And that was an amazing production too. It was in the Athenaeum, and the Mick Roger, who directed it, decided that he was going to have 4 characters that were all bald-headed with big fly-wire glasses. It was a really outrageous production, and we did it without an interval.
Wow.
It was 2.5, 3 hours.
Oh my goodness.
In the Athenaeum,
In the
what those seats are like.
Yes, exactly.
And we had these long spears that had a little button on them, and you could press it, and a blade flicked out of the end of it. So it was we were kind of the henchmen, the murderers, and townspeople. So all those smaller roles became mixed up in that.
Wow.
And we had John Stanton, Bruce Spence, Bruce Miles played Richard, Jonathan Hardy, Lynette Curran.
Wow.
It was a fabulous cast. And Steve Bisley was shooting Mad Max during the day and doing Richard III at night.
Gotta love the Aussie industry, don't you?
That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that is pretty cool. I mean, you've got extensive experience performing Shakespeare, but now that I'm hearing the foundations involved Shakespeare, this is unsurprising. What do you think is the most important aspect of the craft of acting or skill required to successfully perform Shakespeare?
Understanding it.
Yeah.
Because if we understand it, then the audience will. And some years later, I did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream at Melbourne Theatre Company, and Roger Hodgman directed it, and we spent hours around the table just absolutely understanding what every moment was and what every word meant. And so when we came to perform it, we knew what it was, and we knew where the jokes were. It was very funny. We had Bruce Spence playing Puck. We had Genevieve Pico and Pamela Rabe playing Helena and Hermia. It was an extraordinary cast.
Yeah.
Frank Gallagher, Kerry Walker, just fabulous people.
Yep.
And the mechanicals were hilarious. And the mechanicals also doubled as the fairies.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a really interesting double. Bill Zappa played Peter Quince, and I was playing Starveling, and I had to stand on a little box, and my costume was a long kind of gown. And as I stood on the box one night, I stood on the hem, and I had a cowl, and so I couldn't stand up.
Oh no!
So so I did the whole scene like this. Well, we kept it in because it was hilarious, and Bill laughed so much one night that he actually wet his pants on stage, and he won't mind me saying that because we've talked about it extensively. But we understood what we were saying, and what we started to realise was that we were doing school shows, and we started to figure out that the evening shows were starting to be populated by some of the kids that had seen it during the day. Wow. So they were coming back and bringing their mates.
Wow.
And we thought, okay, we've got it. We nailed this one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because I know I've sat in audiences of school kids when it's not good and they don't know what they're saying and they haven't nailed it, and it's painful.
Oh, yeah. It's dire. Yeah, I know. So for the kids, I mean, as you know, having performed, I mean, I've done theatre and education as well, and those kids are probably the toughest audience you play to. So to have them coming back and bringing their friends voluntarily, well done. That's impressive. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's the emphasis. I mean, look, it depends on who you're working with, but there are some productions that kind of want to play with it being very stylized, or they want to make a political comment about something, so they'll set it in a certain era or a certain setting. But yeah, you can't get around the fact that if the actors don't know what they're doing, what they're saying, your audience is just, it doesn't matter how pretty it looks, it doesn't matter how provocative it tries to be. No one's going to engage properly with it.
And ultimately, the play is the important thing. There's a Judi Dench that said, it's only a play. It's just a play. Yeah. Where there was a wonderful actor at Melbourne Theatre Company called Roy Baldwin, and it didn't matter what you were doing. Roy would always, he was an English actor and he was fabulous on stage, but he'd always just say, it's only a play. It's just a play.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And if you realise that and, I don't know, enjoy it, seek the joy of what it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Following on from that then, what would you say has been your best experience of playing Shakespeare, and what did you learn from that?
I've done quite a lot now. And I worked with a company called Essential Theatre, which was Sophie Lampel and Amanda Labonte's company. And they were based in Geelong, and they would hire a group of actors, and it was essential that they could do multiple tasks, that they got on well together, that they were nice people, and that they were good actors. Not necessarily all in that order, but we toured multiple Shakespeares into wineries. And I think the thing that you learn from, let's face it, drunk adults are very similar to playing to student audiences. They lose inhibitions. They want to be involved. They call out. You have to be able to kind of deal with that. But the joy of those productions was we would rehearse in a room, and we would rehearse in a space that we knew we could fit into every space that we played during the season, every winery.
Mm-hmm.
But how you got in and out of that space was different in every single show. So one time you'd be making an entrance from the left, the next you'd be coming from way up the back behind a tree, the next you'd be coming down the aisle. Sometimes there was a wall that you couldn't make an entrance through. So it had to be really spontaneous and changeable. And the fun of that was, for us as actors, it was incredibly spontaneous because it was every show was totally different. And just the joy of, we usually would start in daylight and finish around about dusk. So we didn't have lights. We didn't have a set. We might have a box, or we'd have a few props, some nice costumes. That's it. So no set, no lighting, no sound equipment. You're playing to 400 people outside, sometimes belting into the wind, and you just do it.
Yeah.
And the audiences absolutely loved it, just loved it.
Yeah, they would have. It's very much done in the original production style at the Globe and other places that they toured.
Yeah.
Weren't in the theatres in London, which is getting back to the foundations of how the work would have been originally presented.
We did do a cut-down version normally, so it was edited to probably run 2 hours with an interval. So you do have to lose a bit of the meat. But, you know, Shakespeare always wrote the same scene 3 times.
This is true. Absolutely. To make sure that everybody understood what was going on. That's right. But that's a really, it's a really interesting way of doing it, because a lot of the outdoor Shakespeares these days will use amplification.
Yeah, they do.
And as much as I kind of understand why that's done, I think it's a real test of technique to work without a microphone.
I couldn't agree more, yeah.
And I think that's actually good for actors to experience if they haven't, because it soon tells you if you need to go work on your voice.
The thing about working without amplification is that you're much more in charge of your performance, because when you're using a mic, if you try to go loud to push the audience back, the limiters kick in and bring it back to a normal volume. If you try to draw the audience in by speaking softly, it winds it up.
Yeah.
So it's very one note, I find, when it takes me a minute to get used to listening to stuff that's amplified, especially outdoors.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, and any voice teacher listening.
Hello.
Yeah, right. We have a couple that are actually in our ensemble as well who will definitely agree with this from Shakespeare Republic. But that's an art and a technique that actually, and a discipline of voice that I think anyone who started, pre-1990s in performance is going to have had some grounding in that, because we didn't have the tech at the time.
Nothing.
Theatres didn't. It was unheard of to be on stage at MTC or other such places.
Oh, God.
With a mic.
Never. I also think audiences are now used to hearing it amplified. And so if it's not amplified, they're going, I can't hear. A few years ago, I did a musical in San Francisco. How it came about was really weird. It was an Australian company that took a show about Ethel Merman to a theatre in San Francisco, a beautiful 1,100 seat, 3-level, old, beautiful theatre. And we were about a week into our performance, and we were working without mics. So it was all acoustic. And this woman came up to me backstage and said, I love what you guys are doing. And I said, oh, thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. And she said, yeah. We get a lot of shows in this theater, and they all want to use mics. And, they have body mics. They have mics across the top of the stage, down the side, across the footlights. There are mics everywhere. And you guys, you don't need them. I said, oh, thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. And she said, you don't get it. I'm the sound tech.
Oh, bless. Oh, that's a high compliment, high praise.
Yeah.
But I got to say also, doing a show about Ethel Merman and then miking it, that in itself would be wrong.
Exactly. Because she used to blow mics up.
Right?
Yeah. So we were doing the show, and we did notice for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the show, you would see the audience like going, I can't hear. And then
really leaning in.
They would just go, I can actually hear this. It's fine. I'm not being blasted out of my seat. And we had control of where we wanted the audience to be, leaning forward or sitting back.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. When I first started in amateur theatre, singing and performing, we didn't have mics, couldn't afford them.
No.
And you just had to know that you had to hit that back wall if you needed to.
Yeah.
And also still hit that back wall even if you weren't projecting in a Ethel Merman-ish kind of way.
Exactly.
If you were going to do the quieter whisper, you still had to hit that back wall. I mean...
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing Hamlet in the Playhouse Theatre at the Arts Centre, and there were people in it that I couldn't hear, well-known actors, couldn't hear a word. Peter Carroll played Polonius and could whisper anywhere on the stage and be heard in every seat in the theatre.
Yeah. Yeah.
His technique is extraordinary.
This is it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because then you're not beholden to, you can perform anywhere and do anything pretty much.
Yeah.
So any actors listening to this, please do work on your voice. It's very important for many reasons, but also for longevity. It's a really good idea as well.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to be doing is straining your voice in any way, shape or form. It's a big part of your instrument. But, and I know there's lots of voice teachers who'll be nodding. enthusiastically to that comment because I've had these conversations with them. And I know we all have, because it is a really important thing. That's so fascinating. Well, on the flip side then, what has been your most difficult or challenging experience performing Shakespeare, and what did that teach you?
I'm just trying to think. But one of the most challenging ones, which also turned out to be one of the most exciting and best experiences, was the first time I think I used a radio mic on stage, and they were very, very early. So this would have been about 1982 or 83.
Wow. Yep.
And it was that same production of Midsummer Night's Dream, but we did one night at the Music Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was 3 months after the production had originally closed.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So we came back with a slightly different cast. Bill Zappa wasn't available, so I played Peter Quince and Aegeus, as well as my fairy. And we had these radio mics, and none of us had ever used them on stage before. And we were waiting for them to pop or buzz or whistle or something, and they didn't. And I spoke to the guy that had them, who was a guy from Channel 9 called Murray Tregoning.
Oh, yes, Murray. Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm amazed these radio mics were fabulous. There weren't any problems. And he said, I maintain them. I went, oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Good point.
What was tricky about that was I think we had 7,000 people in the audience at the Music Bowl, and we had one chance, and it was as scary as I've ever. I think I've never been so scared opening that first scene as Aegeus, and people said I just grabbed it and took off, and everybody went, with me. I mean, I wasn't the main character by any means, but there was just a level of energy that we hit in that production, which was fabulous. But yeah, it was a tough one.
Yeah, that would have been.
Yeah.
Again, working with the new tech. I mean, and when actors, especially that particular company, who would not have been using the mics at all,
Not at all.
in theatre, that would have been, you would have been worried that you were going to blow a mic or cause a problem as well. And oh my gosh, and also at the bowl.
And we had costume changes that we didn't ever get to rehearse wearing the mic packs. So it was it was pretty interesting.
Would have been like you would have had one of those old Walkman cassette players as the battery pack, because they would have been huge. Yeah. That would have been a nightmare with the costume changes.
It was pretty big, yeah.
Wow. I mean, you just do it, don't you?
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that? What was the thing that you took away from doing that?
Don't be scared of being scared, I think. It's that thing of if you walk up to the edge of the cliff and jump, a net appears. And it certainly appeared that night, and it was a wonderful production. It was, a great night.
Yeah,
really good performance. And then we were back at Russell Street the following night doing a Louis Nowra play.
Man, that is so cool, though. And again, I guess that was our version of rep, wasn't it? Really, doing those sort of productions and in Australia here of or at least in the larger cities, of doing the kind of seasons where you were doing back in the day what they used to, as you know, being part of it, having that company that was then performing all these different plays one after the other over a season, which is brilliant. So from Shakespeare at the Bowl,
and sadly it doesn't happen anymore.
No,
and I think part of the reason is the companies have reduced the number of actors that they use. So when you see shows at MTC now, for instance, and Sydney Theatre Company, your average cast size is around about 3 or 4. We had average cast sizes of 10 to 15. And so a lot more actors were employed.
Yeah.
And you would play, you know, you'd do a show like Grapes of Wrath and play 7 roles, or Under Milkwood we did with 10 actors.
Wow.
110 characters with 10.
Right.
Yeah.
10 actors.
But,
wow.
and every character had to have a different voice. Same accent, different voice.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, they're also the kind of system, much like the rep theatre in the UK, that would give an actor a chance to experiment, to play, to actually grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a shame. And again, as we know, it always comes down to money. But also it taught actors how to work as a team, I think, too, as an ensemble.
Oh, very much so. Because as I said earlier, you would be rehearsing one play during the day, playing a different one at night. And I remember, you'd be doing threepenny opera rehearsals during the daytime, and we were playing Midsummer Night's Dream at night. And you couldn't get 2 more different plays. And then the following one was a Louis Nara play called Pax Americana. I remember one night in the wings, we were doing The Dream, and Bruce Miles was playing Bottom. He was directing Pax Americana 2 plays away. And he came up to me in the wings this night and he said, "Can you tap dance?" I said, "No, but I could learn." And he said, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, terrific." And he walked away. During the day, I was rehearsing threepenny opera with David Atkins.
Wow.
Who was the best tap dancer in the country. And I said to him, can you teach me to tap dance? He said, "Yeah, 6 lessons, no worries." It took a few more than that, I must admit. But I was able to pull off a little bit of a soft shoe shuffle in the play.
Love it.
And those cross-pollinations were just fabulous.
Obviously, we still have the acting community, but definitely the closeness of working together like that and being able to, as you say, cross-pollinate between productions is something that it'd be lovely if we could reinstate.
It would be nice.
Would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice. Well, I mean, I think speaking again about the Shakespeare thing, and because of the amount of Shakespeare that you've done, and obviously people will be coming to you with Shakespeare questions, and can you help me, Don, with this piece for Shakespeare and all that stuff that goes on. Are there any attitudes about Shakespeare or approaches to his work that you don't agree with? And if so, what are those? And what's your point of view on that issue based on your knowledge and experience?
I think I try to make it. One of the things I loved about Essential Theatre was we would try to get away from the received pronunciation type production. So it wasn't all beautifully spoken. It was rough and ready, and occasionally you'd throw in a British accent from somewhere, but mostly it was Australian accents. And I think that kind of started with Bell Shakespeare in Australia. And I remember when I first heard it, I kind of went, I'm not so sure about that. But it makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was interesting when I was at drama school in London, our voice teacher was actually Australian.
Oh, really?
It was hilarious. And all the Brits were like, "Are we going to start sounding Australian by the end of this?" And she was saying, "No, trust me, you'll be fine." But it was interesting because obviously being in England and you know this, having lived there, your ear starts to become attuned to those accents. And I have a terrible habit of mimicking. I can't help it.
Me too. I'm terrible.
So bad, because people think you're taking the mic, and you're not. You're actually just reflecting back what you're hearing. But I was actually encouraged to keep my accent intact by the Brits, which I thought was really interesting. And they did say it's because it's your point of difference.
Yes.
But also it means that, sure, you're going to be asked to do accents and all the rest, but you need to get used to performing and embodying these characters in your own voice, because that's going to keep you grounded to begin with. Yeah. And then once you know how to do that, and obviously study voice and accent, then you can take that essence and then put it into your accents and the other characters that you play later.
Yeah.
But that's what, with Shakespeare particularly, I think it really helps for people to do it in their own accent. I think that helps keep it as authentic as possible for the performer concerned as well. So, yeah, I understand the logic. And I love that. There's the theory that original pronunciation shares more in common with American accents than English RP.
Yeah.
And to a degree to Australian accents with some of the way we pronounce some of the words as well.
Yeah, true.
Because they certainly were not walking around on Elizabethan stages sounding like, Queen Elizabeth II. It's not.
No, they were not.
Definitely not what they were sounding like.
Yeah.
It's a hangover from the Royal Shakespeare Company's early days, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. When I first went to London, I had letters of introduction.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember those?
I got one too. Yeah.
It wasn't like, you sent an email or rang somebody up. Phone calls were very expensive.
Yes.
I was given a little stack of letters to deliver to people when I got to London from a woman who had come from London, who was then in Tasmania, a woman called Diana Large. And one of the letters was to a woman called Frida Hodgson. Now, Frida had been a teacher at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art for 30 years. She was an extraordinary woman. She dressed in Victorian-era clothes with a high ruffle lace neck. And she confessed to me one day that her beautiful red brocade dress was made out of her old curtains. She said, "Oh, darling, you must come to luncheon on Sunday." So we went along on the Sunday, and there were all actors there playing shove halfpenny and telling grand stories and drinking sherry. And after a couple of visits, I said to her, "Now, I understand you teach." And she said, "Yes, darling, I do." I said, I was wondering if I could come to you for some classes. And she said, "Yes, of course." I said, "How much do you charge?" And she said, "Well, darling, I normally charge £5 an hour." Now, I was earning, I think, £19 a week.
Oh, my goodness.
So £5 an hour was a lot. I must have gone white, blanched. And she said, "Yes, £5 an hour, darling. For students, £1 an hour. And for you, darling, 50p. And I melted. And she said, so every Wednesday I would go and have a 1 hour class, and she would just hand me monologues and say, learn this one, learn this one, learn this one. And then we would work on accents and stuff. And one of the ones she handed me was Corin the Shepherd from As You Like It. And the accent I did was sort of West Country. And I learned it, and it became my favourite audition piece. And I did it and did it and did it. And a few years ago, I did a production, and they said, "We want you to do it with an Australian accent." And I was like, "Oh, I can't do that."
Yeah.
But I had to go back and virtually relearn it with a different accent.
You absolutely would have had to, yes.
It was very hard.
Yeah, well, you would have managed it, Don, because you're a professional and you will make that happen. But yeah, that is the issue. I mean, I found, having obviously really come to grips with Shakespeare in the UK, that coming back here and then being asked to audition and being asked to do it in an Australian accent, my accent's already a bit odd anyway. It's not purely Australian and it's definitely not purely English, but I have this weird mixed accent now, and being told you sound too toffee.
Yeah.
Where's the strine? And doing the Australian accent just sounded so wrong in my ears because I hadn't been doing it that strongly.
Yeah.
So, and it is hard, isn't it? It's like you do have to.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating process, because the muscularity, I think, we learn to pronounce it a certain way, and so the jaw muscularity and where the tongue's placed and all that stuff when saying the words, and also the placement of the sound depending on the accent in the mask of your face. I mean, that all has to shift. It's a really weird thing.
It also changes the way you have to think about it. Like your brain has to make a whole shift from the sort of person that you're seeing in your mind's eye.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is an interesting process. I mean, I loved that when you did Corin for us for Shakespeare Republic season 3, that you decided to make him this lovely West Country farmer type, and we set you right in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was our backstory? That you'd come up
you,
to see family and got stuck.
Can you see that building there?
I can.
That's what they were building when I was doing.
Oh my goodness! For those that are listening to the audio version, Don has just pointed out that the building behind him that he's sitting in front of right now, looking out his window, the building behind him is now completed. That was being built.
Yeah.
That's how long it's been.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can see the love as well for that piece. I mean, it came through when you performed it for us in that.
I've always loved that piece.
It's great. It's a great piece, and you were so beautiful. I mean, I know that you don't like people praising you out of the blue, Don. You get like most actors and go, no, that's nice, shush now. But it was such a beautiful turn and such a great representation of Corin. So yeah, we loved it, and I can see that. Yeah, that deep foundation. What a way to be introduced to it, though. That sounds so. Oh, it sounds blissful, actually, to be able to have done that. And how gorgeous of her to say 50p an hour. That's
she was a sweetheart. She was an extraordinary woman.
Yeah,
and, we became, very close friends during that time.
As you would, yeah. Would.
And she was so supportive as well. She was that person that was saying, "Oh, darling, just do it, just do it." Yes, no, you can do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, a cheerleader, a mentor.
Yeah. And she pushed me into a lot of areas that I would never have gone, and just material that I probably wouldn't have contacted either. Peer Gynt and Richard III, and just great stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and that's what I think we all need when we're first starting is that person.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's lovely. I love that. That's such a it's reminding me of being in London, and I was there later than you were, but there's something about, and I think we have it a bit here. I don't think we're bereft of that here in Australia, but I think because, and maybe, I don't know, but because of the old patron system that used to exist back in the Elizabethan times, that sort of moved through into modern times of the way theatres would work when they began performing plays other than passion plays, although I'm sure it probably happened in the passion play era too. But there were the older actors who would guide the younger actors, playwrights that were more established that were guiding younger playwrights, almost apprenticing with them so that, the younger playwrights would apprentice with them so they would then become a playwright in their own right. That mentorship I found in the UK particularly was incredibly embedded in their industry.
Yeah. Yes, very much so.
And I'm grateful for the time that I had there and the people that I was lucky enough to be mentored by as well, because I think it made a huge impact on me too as a young creative, stepping out into the world. And I was lucky to get that from an acting perspective, but also from, a directing and production perspective as well. So yes, and hence why we pass it on, right, Doc?
Exactly. There's a great story about Burt Reynolds. When he did his first film, he had a scene with Gregory Peck, and they shot all Gregory Peck's close-ups and the wide shot, and it came to the end of the day and they said, "We haven't got time to shoot your close-up, Burt. We'll have to come back and do it tomorrow." He looked at the call sheet. Gregory Peck was not called the next day. So he thought, okay, I'm going to have to do this with the first AD or somebody reading opposite me. So he turned up 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was Gregory Peck in full makeup and costume, who gave him the most extraordinary performance for his close-up. At the end of it, he went up to Gregory Peck and he said, "How can I ever thank you for what you did today?" And Gregory Peck just said, "Pass it on."
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most, telling stories for our industry. It's what we should all be doing. We should all be, mentoring and helping younger performers along the way.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we're back to that thing about learning what it is to be an ensemble.
Yeah.
No matter where you're placed on the call sheet.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work that way. There's obviously been this real kind of hierarchy that's kicked in, and it's existed pretty much since particularly movies have existed. But that's such a beautiful story about Gregory Peck.
It's great.
Right. Yeah. And someone of his caliber who just went, and look, there are people operating today in the industry that
of course there are.
That would be very similar, but not enough. So more of that, peeps, more of actually turning up to support your fellow actors and your peers.
Yeah.
But also, passing it on, mentoring the next lot. It's the way we learn. It's how we learn how the industry works, how, all the business side of it. That's not often taught in schools, learnt on the job. So set the right example, everyone.
Well, what's superannuation?
Oh, don't. Oh, my gosh. Think exactly. Things like that. I'm just going to do the PSA right now for all of that. Everybody, if you're not a member, become a member of the union and get engaged. But this is another way, I guess, how we keep the community rolling on.
The other one that I'm involved with too is the Victorian Actors Benevolent Trust. Each of the states has a benevolent trust, and we raise money by doing bucket rattles at Melbourne Theatre Company shows. We also have fundraisers at various times. So if you ever see the yellow buckets outside a Melbourne Theatre Company show, chuck a couple of bucks in, and the support we're able to give actors when they're in trouble, and they don't have to be old. Trust me, you'd be amazed some of the people that we've helped. We don't talk about it because it's all kept very under the hat.
Yeah, it's confidential.
Yeah.
But it's something that I don't know actually hopefully more in the industry are now aware of it. I mean, you guys were very prominent during
COVID.
Right?
Yeah.
And other disasters. So I hope the industry is well aware now that these various benevolent societies for the actors exist.
Yeah.
But the wider public, I don't know, are quite as switched on to it. There's so much noise out there that trying to cut through that is hard.
I think the MTC audience are very switched on to it, and probably the Sydney audiences as well.
Yep.
One of the things during COVID, I think we gave away over $100,000 in Victoria alone.
Wow.
In food vouchers, because a lot of people were doing it tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, general public, you can also, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but can you donate through the website as required?
Yeah. vabt.com.au, and there's a donate button.
So if you'd like to support your local performers and actors in Victoria, and it's there as a safety net for those that need it, please go and donate, because, the acting profession is precarious. As much as we'd love it not to be, it is precarious as far as financials go. So every bit helps. I feel like I'm doing a radiothon now.
It's a bit like that. Sorry.
Right. So donate now. I'm doing the telethon thing, but it is actually really important. And I think and because you're here now, Don, with us and so involved in the organisation, it's really important to also highlight that. Getting back to Shakespeare. Yes. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, why do you think that Shakespeare endures and continues to be performed so widely?
Great stories. Wonderful characters. The characters are just joyous. I mean, you think about the characters in, especially the comedies, for me, the characters are just hilarious. And even in a play like Hamlet, where suddenly you've got the gravedigger, who is just this comic genius character, and also in Macbeth, great tragedy, and you've got the gatekeeper. It's hilarious. It's just hilarious. And I think it's the characters, and he's a good writer. I don't care who wrote it. whoever wrote it, whatever that argument is, I don't care. The plays are great.
Yeah, I agree. I don't tend to get into the authorship argument, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there now going, but, I don't care. There is enough evidence to say this guy actually wrote these plays, and bottom line as well, as we know, and actually has been discussed here on the podcast with others, the Elizabethan writers' room was essentially the pub. So there may have been input from other playwrights. It probably happened just because.
Yeah.
And when they got up on stage to rehearse stuff, I'm sure the actors also threw their 2 pence worth in.
Without a doubt.
Right. So, but yes, I think he was the guy, as far as I'm concerned, William Shakespeare wrote the plays, and he put all of that churn together, all those ideas and everything else, and came up with that particular format and that particular story in a written context. So, as writers anywhere will tell you, you are influenced by everything around you, and that includes other people's ideas and input. When you hand things out for feedback, people are going to come back with stuff that will end up in some way influencing what goes on anyway. So
for sure.
Stop it with the authorship, guys.
Yeah. And I think that's the joy of doing a Shakespeare play, is that the cast will come in with different ideas and different thoughts. It's the same with any play. And I think it's why it keeps getting done, because actors keep finding new things, different ways, and different people. And as you said before, one of the most important things we have as performers is us, who we are, which is different from the person next to us, sitting right beside us in the rehearsal room. We bring different things. And I often ask, I often get embarrassed in rehearsal rooms because I ask really stupid questions, and I go, oh, that wasn't very smart. But sometimes those really stupid questions lead to an exploration of something that, why did he do that? What? There's a great director I've worked with quite a lot, Dennis Moore, and Dennis. I asked him one day, I said, why are you such a good director? And he said, oh, am I? I don't know. I think because when I sit and watch rehearsal, I try to play the stupidest person in the audience. So I constantly ask why. Why did you do that? Why did you walk across to the chair on that line? And it's the total opposite to what some of the directors at Melbourne Theatre Company in the early days, like John Sumner. John would have the script from the West End production with the stage manager's directions written in it. And he would say, yeah, no, it says to walk to the chair and sit on that line. So please walk to the chair and sit when you say that line. And what you start to figure out very quickly is that you have to work out your own motivation. I remember an actor one day saying, what's my motivation? And John said, your paycheck. And so
bloody hell,
we had to work out what our motivations were.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways of working in the rehearsal room. And that, they're two total ends of the of the same line.
Yep.
Dennis would just say, why did you do that? And then you have to work out, oh, yeah, why did I do that? Or you could ask him why you do that, and he'd say, well, let's discuss it. Let's talk about why, Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, that having the script and the blocking for pre-existing productions.
Yes.
And there are sadly people who still do that today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop that, because you've got, as you just said, you've got different actors playing these roles. Yeah. They're not going to be able to replicate exactly what happened. But in musical theatre, as you know, particularly,
absolutely,
it's in the contract in many cases that you must replicate exactly what was seen either on Broadway or the West End.
Yeah. I did the Australian production of Fiddler on the Roof with Topol when he came over to do it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
When we arrived in the theatre, because we actually rehearsed on the stage at the Regent, it was real luxury.
Yeah.
But when we turned up on day one, the stage was marked into a grid. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the front. And the director, Sammy Dallas Bayes, was the original dance captain in the original 1963 production on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And he had the Bible from that production, and you were told on that line you walk from A7 to B12. And everybody did it. That's what was blocked. And we reproduced the 1963 production of Fiddler on the Roof. It's an incredible play.
Well, it is. Absolutely.
Incredible play.
It
incredible
is.
Musical.
But again, I mean, I sort of get, I mean, I came up in musical theatre, so I kind of understand the logic of it to a degree. Yeah. It's about lighting plans. It's about...
Lighting is a big one, yeah.
It's a big one. It's about, also it is about the choreography, because quite often the choreography is duplicated. So that means that the dancers have to go in certain places, which means the actors need to be going in certain... Yes. And it is also very much directed by the shape of things visually, obviously, from the audience's perspective. But I often find it very difficult when you are doing a play that's not a musical and you've got someone who's trying to do the same thing, because I think that's a very different beast.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are times when you need to be in a certain place for a lighting cue or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, ideally, the lighting would be built around what the actor's doing.
You'd hope, right? That would be the thing in that situation. And I mean, look, I think it's also an old school attitude to directing, which was you start with blocking.
Yeah.
Which was how it used to be taught.
It was, yes.
And carries through now, as you know, to film and television, because that is required for cameras and, again, lighting and other such things. Sometimes they can be a little fluid, but generally, you know, and they'll work off what the actors have done in rehearsal. But, yeah, there's blocking there. You've got to hit your blocking, hit your mark, all the rest of it. My next question, if you could ask Shakespeare one question, what would it be?
Oh, gee, I don't know. How did you get to be so clever? I think is probably the only thing I can think of, because he was clever. To have been the same person that wrote Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, and King Lear and Macbeth.
Right.
What? Yeah. Where did that brain come from?
Yeah.
Where did that? That's just extraordinary.
You're right, and do it on the kind of timelines that they would needed to have been written on as well.
Yeah.
Because of demand from the audience for new works. So they were fairly... I'm sure he was working on more than one thing at a time too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think we have modern writers and producers and directors who are putting out extraordinary work.
You're right. There's such an interesting collection of shows out there now. So I think if there was more money, we'd probably be seeing quite a few more interesting things out there.
I agree.
But Shakespeare, I guess, also because he basically co-owned the theatre that he put his works on in, so he was under time and money pressure to keep producing the goods.
Yeah.
And look, again, as they've discovered recently, analysing the writing styles in the Henry plays, they've realised he probably wrote those with Christopher Marlowe.
Right, okay.
So he did, and he had apprentices as well that he worked with in his latter years when he was ready to retire, and that was when they were handing the mantle over to the next generation of playwrights. But there was some collaboration going on, but, yeah, there's a whole swathe of those plays that clearly he had kicking about in his head and got to play with. I mean, I think he did, again, as writers do, I think he pulled from inspiration of what he'd already read. A lot of the Greek mythology and stuff is definitely influenced. I mean, he even sets things in Athens. So clearly that's getting played with. But also he drew from local folklore, from Celtic folklore. I mean, there's a lot of different places that he pulled. And he, a bit like a magpie, you know, he kind of pulled all these ideas together and came up with a new thing. I do love that of all the plays that he wrote, the Scottish play, Macca's, is truly uniquely his. That hasn't come. He's used characters that existed that were real and then completely changed the history and made up a totally new story. And I think that is actually, that's why I always go back to that play as being quite fascinating, because I mean, Midsummer Night's Dream can sort of be also tagged that way, where he's taken the basic sort of Greek mythology characters and then melded those with essentially like Celtic fairy kind of type characters. And The Tempest being another one, of course, so I find he wrote every genre. That's what is also quite extraordinary.
Actually, you just reminded me, I played Caliban when I was in Launceston. I must have been about 18.
Wow.
But it was a ballet.
Get out of here. Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a ballet, and I played Caliban. So it was all, physical. Yeah.
That is amazing.
I just remember that. It was in Launceston, and I'm trying to remember if Graham Murphy was in the cast. He may have been. You know Graham Murphy? He's a well-known Australian choreographer and dancer.
Yeah. That's extraordinary.
Yes.
Don, honestly, your career, I love it. It's so diverse. You've done so many different things. But now we're going to do quickfire Shakespeare questions.
Okay.
Favorite Shakespeare character?
Corin.
Favorite Shakespeare play?
The Dream.
Favorite Shakespeare performance you've seen?
Henry V at Stratford in about 1978 with Alan Howard playing Henry V. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Favorite Shakespeare character you've played?
Feste. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful character.
Absolutely brilliant character. Finally, describe Shakespeare in 3 words.
Ooh. Fun. Characters. Exciting.
Excellent.
My question for you is, because it's so extreme, where did your love of Shakespeare come from?
Oh, right. Do you know, it's really interesting. I wasn't a huge fan of Shakespeare growing up. I had not a great introduction to him, as most of us had introductions through high school English class. That was very bad. That didn't go well. And so I wasn't a huge fan pretty much until I got to drama school. I had to learn a piece to get into drama school.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a bit of like pulling teeth, but I got there. It was Queen Catherine from Henry VIII. Anyway, got into drama school and was still rolling my eyes about Shakespeare and going, oh, I'm going to do Shakespeare now. What the hell? And luckily had a really good Shakespeare teacher, and also got handed my dissertation subject, which was Elizabethan theatre. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Universe, for hitting me over the head with this. Anyway, so it was the combination of living in the town where he lived and worked and actually getting to understand the history of Shakespeare, of his time and of him as a person. So I think for me, the thing that really triggered the love of Shakespeare was suddenly understanding that he was a real person.
Yeah.
That he actually was a human being who'd lived and breathed and loved and laughed and fought and had all the emotions, got drunk. You know, I went to the pub where he used to drink and where they've been known to actually do some plays as well from the gallery balconies. Went to the church where he worshipped while living in that area, and the Globe Theatre was being built at the time, rebuilt at the time. So I got permission to get in there while they were rebuilding and actually work that up, which was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I got to be part of the conversations around with the architects, because the couple, I went there a few times, and one of the times the architects were there trying to work out where the pillars were supposed to go, because there'd been no record left of where the pillars went on the stage.
My goodness.
So there was huge conversations around, well, we're trying to gauge from the drawings of the swan, and I don't know, there's this sketch of the rose, but we don't really know where and I got to learn about the philosophy and the spiritual philosophy as well of the time, which was, the heavens is where all the good things come from, and the reason there's a trapdoor in the stage is that's where all the bad things come from, and then all the human beings live on the stage itself, and understanding more and more as well that it was kind of the golden age of England at the time when he was writing. Suddenly the sciences were getting seriously looked at. They didn't really understand science as we understand it, obviously. There were lots of leeches and things still being used to leach stuff. But that aspect was fascinating too, to realise it was such a curious age that they really wanted to understand. And I think that's also why he flourished, because I think he was quite curious and it was kind of a man of his age where he wanted to know more. So and that sort of comes out in his writing. I think he asked people lots of questions. I think he observed a lot. I think and also started life as an actor. And I think for me, who'd always wanted to also be a writer, to realise that Shakespeare had started as an actor and then gone on to be a writer, I just started to identify with him, the creative, I think. And then when I was at the Globe, one of the I think it was one of the architects from memory said to me, "Oh, you're an actor. Do you want to get up on the stage?" And I was like, "Can I do that?
Okay.
Is that okay?" And they were like, "Yeah, go for it. No one's going to care." And so, and I got up there, and I was just going to stand there and kind of soak that up, because they were finishing off all the finishing touches. So they were still adding balustrades and seats and things, which were all getting hand carved. And then he said to me, "Well, say something." And I went, and I still wasn't a pure Shakespeare convert. So I said, "Well, I'm a singer, so I might sing something if that's all right." And he said, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And so I sang Amazing Grace, and just a couple of verses of it. And the acoustics were incredible in that space. Yeah. I mean, they're amazing. But it was interesting for me. I stood there, and all the craftsmen that were there, one by one, stopped working while I was singing. I was very caught up in just listening to that sound coming back. So I hadn't quite realised that that's what they were doing. But they, one by one, it just all got very, very quiet. And then I kind of finished, and that last note kind of hung there, and bless them, they all stood up and gave me a standing ovation.
Oh, my God, what a fabulous memory to have.
Right, which was extraordinary. And I was incredibly embarrassed because I'd forgotten they were all there, because I was so caught up in that moment. I was like, "Oh, I forgot you were all there." But that, I think, really locked in for me also that not only was Shakespeare a real person, but so was his company, that those characters had been played already by real people that existed. I don't know. It was something in that moment. It was like I portaled through time. I don't know. And I walked out of that building basically a born-again Shakespearean.
Something I thought of too is that, and I have heard it said a few times, Shakespeare didn't write the plays so that kids 400 years later would sit in a classroom having to study it. He wrote plays to be performed by actors, to entertain, to tell stories. And I think that's the important thing that we have to remember when we do Shakespeare, that it's pure storytelling. And they're great stories.
Right?
Yeah.
And so as a result of understanding, and for me, and this is why when I teach Shakespeare, I will always make the students do a little bit of an exploration of the Elizabethan period.
Yeah.
Because I want them to remember that this is not just some dusty book that sits on a shelf. It's actually written by someone who lived, and he was writing about what he saw in the time that he lived.
Yeah, yeah.
And doing it in such a way that it's become universal, which is extraordinary when you think about it. But because he was purely taking human nature and putting it on the page, or putting the words into actors' mouths, however you want to look at it, where he created these stories that are still resonating because he so keenly and acutely could read human beings.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
And so, yeah, Shakespeare wrote for everyone, as we know. I mean, you were talking about it before, that when you're editing a Shakespeare play, you can probably cut a couple of scenes now because he does say things in 3 or 4 different ways. But that's because he was writing for everyone. He was writing for the groundlings right the way through to the Queen.
Yeah. And he was writing for people to go out to the toilet or go to the bar and come back.
Correct.
So if you missed a bit, they'd tell you again later.
You'd catch up.
Yeah.
Because as we know, I mean, as you said, you've done Shakespeare in the Vineyards with Essential Theatre. You've done theatre and education with kids.
And the Botanic Gardens.
The gardens, right? Yeah. That's a taste of what the Elizabethan theatre scene was like. It was chaotic.
Yeah.
So much was going on at the time when actors were just trying to tell the story. And to the point, too, where they'd sell seats to sit on the stage. So you actually had audience trying to get in on the act on the stage that you had to deal with. You had people that were selling stuff, oranges, whatever else. You had people playing dice and cards. And again, we're back to that comment you made. Shakespeare, it's meant to be alive. It's meant to be a spoken, embodied, performed, played with thing. It's not actually about reading it out of a book. Sure, if you want to do that and that's what floats your boat, go for it. Love it. Great. But anyone who's approaching Shakespeare, just start saying the words out loud.
Yeah.
Don't read them.
I think that's really important. Say them out loud because they're meant to be spoken out loud.
100%.
Yeah. Mm.
Exactly what he wrote them for. Anyway, thank you for that question. That was a good question, and it's fun. It's nice to go back and reminisce about what happened.
Yeah.
Then I just started, becoming a born-again Shakespearean and doing lots of Shakespeare plays and everything else, which I never thought was going to happen. I'd sworn it off. So, yeah, it's I'm really glad that I did actually embrace it. So back to the acting thing. Don, do you have any gigs coming up that we should be keeping an eye out for that you can talk about?
No, I've done a couple of things that are mainly films recently that are, coming out, but some you're not allowed to talk about.
Right. So all these NDAs that are getting signed. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I do have an episode of 12, which is the show about juries, and that was a fabulous. It was a small role, but it was a fabulous little role, and I got to work with Erin Jean Norval, who is extraordinary. Yeah. Nice.
Excellent. Yeah, okay. So we'll put up details for that, everybody, so that you can go and check that out and see Don in action. And finally, where can people find out more about you online?
donbridges.com. Easy.
It's that easy, folks. Yes.
I'll have to update it now, won't I?
You will. This is the thing. You'll have to update it now that you've said it out loud. Exactly. Also, IMDb. Don does have an IMDb profile. So
I do, yes.
You can go check that out for the film and TV stuff. Definitely. Excellent. Well, Don Bridges, thank you so much for being part of Musing on the Bard. It's been a joy and a pleasure as always.
Thank you. It was a joy and a pleasure for me as well. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I've been your host, Sally McLean, and this has been Musing on the Bard. You can read more about our work, all our guests, and this podcast at our official website, musingonthebard.com. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, head to our Patreon. Links are on the site. This podcast was made possible via a small events grant from the British Shakespeare Association. Produced by Incognita Enterprises, edited and presented by Sally McLean. With thanks to all of our guests and our Patreon patrons for continuing to support our work. Until next time, I wish you health, wealth, and happiness. See you anon.